Chapter 1. Dr. Ajani had finally taken his jacket off when the call came to ruin his night. He didn't answer it at first. He finished hanging up his suit jacket carefully, deliberately, before looking at the caller ID on his phone. McCoy. Of course it was McCoy. No doubt with some fresh disaster on the project for him to fix. The project. The project. So much was riding on it. But he'd already spent all day holding McCoy's hand. Surely she could hold things together for a few damn hours before the subject went to sleep. He let the phone ring as he removed and hung up his tie as carefully as he had his jacket. She could wait a few more seconds. Still, he supposed that if she was calling now, it must have some importance. He had stressed the severity of calling him on his cell phone after office hours before. It seemed another lesson would be necessary. "Yes?" he said, pressing the button on the phone to answer it. It's Alice." "I already know that, Dr. McCoy. Your caller ID came up on my phone." I'm really sorry to have to call you." "If you feel like you're wasting my time with your call, then apologizing for wasting my time only takes up even more of my time. If you aren't wasting my time with your call, then you are now wasting my time with your meaningless apology." He could actually hear her gulp over the phone. Johnny wasn't sure whether to be pleased that he had driven home his point so deeply, or annoyed with McCoy's pathetic display. She was a double PhD, for God's sake. You'd think she'd have a bit more confidence in herself. She began again, then stopped herself. "We have a problem." "Then clearly you should hurry to the point." "We may have, she said, her voice cracking slightly. "We may have lost containment." Johnny froze. His arm stayed stock still in the act of hanging his tie on its designated spot on his tie rack. His face was unaccustomed to the wrinkles of emotion, but now the skin on Johnny's scalp drew back in alarm and a cold sweat began to form. It was his turn to gulp, swallowing down hard before he spoke again. "What do you mean? What exactly do you mean?" "I got a call from the custodial staff at the office." "You're not there? You're not at the office?" "No, my daughter, it's past dinner time. I had to." "You're not at the office?" "No." Unbelievable. He took his eye off the ball for 1 second, giving it to McCoy, and she promptly dropped it. "Then you got the call from the custodial staff because there's nobody else in the entire building, correct?" "I was headed back straight once I—" "Tell me exactly what the custodial staff told you." "It's not good. I mean, it sounded— I know there's 3 dead." Johnny closed his eyes. 3 dead. There would be no way to sweep this under the rug then. "The subject killed them?" he said. "On purpose, you mean?" she asked. I don't know. The guy who called me was terrified and could barely string 2 sentences together." "Yes, what's that like?" Johnny thought. He waited, and when McCoy didn't continue, he said, "Don't make me ask for more information." I'm sorry, it's just the things he was saying. It didn't make any sense. He talked about the walls bending like taffy, the air changing shape, whatever that means, and I could hear things in the background, things that weren't human. What? "Calm yourself," he said, although whether he was speaking to McCoy or to himself, he wasn't sure. "We knew that the impossible would become possible once we brought the subject back to life. That was the entire point of the exercise." "Still—" "And it's not like you haven't seen plenty of mages' tricks before," Johnny said. "It's an integral part of our business, after all." "We went too far on this one. I told you that he was too far—" "Enough. Are you still in contact with the custodial staff?" "No. I heard something that sounded like a damn hyena laughing, and then the guy screamed and the call cut out." "Conjurations," Johnny said to himself. "That is bad. Conjurations. Top of the list of the tricks that had been forbidden to the subject." The subject had been made well aware of that list, well aware that ticking off any one of the magical activities on it would result in his termination. He'd known that, and he'd done it anyway, which meant he was ready for a fight. It was an unaccustomed feeling, the panic, rising up like a swirling wave of electricity inside of him. Still, for all the terrible implications the subject's defiance meant, there was still a strong current of curiosity mixed in with Johnny's panic. The walls were bending like taffy, the custodian had reported. Alteration magic? That powerful? If it were true, then whatever else was happening in that office building, history was being made as well. No maestro had ever managed to control that level of magic in all the years of recorded study. McCoy's trembling voice pulled him out of his thoughts. What do we do? What anyone does when something like this happens, Johnny said. Call the police. Are you really about to ask me if I'm sure? Johnny said. Something about rebuking his subordinate brought his emotional level back down to that of a glacier. Do not identify yourself when you call. Route the call through the office switchboard. Make it appear as if the call is coming from within the building. She said this couldn't happen. She said he would be under our control if we... She, Johnny said, is not a part of this equation. She is not our concern right now. Right now, our concern is containment. How do you expect to contain that? I do not. That is a job for the police. Hence your phone call. Make it now and stop wasting time talking to me. He ended the call and tossed his phone onto the bed, the gesture amounting to practically a temper tantrum for him. His panic mixed with curiosity was wearing off now. In its place was annoyance and anger at the titanic mess he was going to have to clean up. It was going to get a lot worse before it got better. Trouble at the office? A voice said behind him. A momentary splash of adrenaline surged through Johnny, before he recognized the voice, and the surge of fear twisted into mere annoyance. When it rains, it pours. Of course he would have to endure not only one thorn in his side tonight, but two. He finally turned to face the voice behind him. Sitting in a chair was a lean, middle-aged man. Salt and pepper hair and beard, both trimmed neatly, and the expensive suit that he wore was tailored. His legs were crossed casually, and he seemed more at home in Johnny's bedroom than Johnny himself. How did you get in here? Johnny asked. The uninvited man in the chair shrugged. Teleportation is an extremely convenient and discreet method of travel. And what? No hello? Hello, Matthias, Johnny said. Matthias's thin lips curled into a smile that didn't extend to his eyes. You don't sound happy to see me, Dr. Johnny. That hurts my feelings. Dr. Johnny swallowed down in his distaste. I have a bit of a situation to handle. That's an understatement, Matthias said. I don't know what on earth made you think that bringing Polonius back from the grave was a good idea. I thought he might be able to help in continuing to refine the procedure. There's still... Who gives a solitary shit about refining the procedure? Matthias said. I do, Johnny said. You may have given up on it, but I haven't. It still has possibilities. Matthias rolled his eyes. It's a shell game, Johnny. It always has been. Whether you knew it or not, whether you want to admit it or not. You don't work for Revival Tech. You haven't put in the years that I have trying to build... No, I haven't, Matthias said, interrupting Johnny again. And I don't care. Not about your feelings, not about your board of directors or stockholders or whoever the fuck you pretend to answer to. You answer to me. Johnny stayed silent. Or have you forgotten, Matthias said. Have you forgotten how you came to us, came to me, back when your company was about to fold? When you had nothing to show for all your experiments, even after your company spent their bottom dollar on hiring Polonius? I remember that we had an understanding. Have you forgotten that we were the ones to provide the expert who really made your resurrection experiments work? Oh, yes, Johnny said. Your expert. Let's talk about her. She has a name, Doctor. I know she has a name. I don't like to use it. Even after she saved your company, Matthias said, she and Polonius working together finally fixed the little problems with your procedure, and... Now it was Johnny's turn to interrupt. No, No, they didn't fix it. Not really. The revival process is still flawed. Matthias's teeth flickered in a sneer. Who cares? I care. You sent her here, and everything about her was poison. She didn't give us a real fix. What she gave you was good enough. Good enough to save your company. Ajani let that sit for a moment before speaking. She disgusted me, he finally said. Polonius followed her around like a puppy, you know. When we revived him, all he would talk about was her. He called her his Isis and his goddess. Pathetic. Yes, well, she's not exactly high on my list of favorite people either. I think she killed him, Ajani said. Polonius. He wasn't sick. He wasn't frail. I think she seduced him, learned anything she could from him, and then killed him. Of course she did. That was the plan all along. What? Well, not all along, Matthias said. At first we were as interested in the prospect of resurrection as you were. But once we realized that it was nothing but a pipe dream, we kept our eyes open for other opportunities with your company. And we found them, didn't we? Ajani stared at the floor, stunned. Where is she now? No idea, Matthias said. After she killed Polonius, she disappeared into the wind. There's some rumors about Korea, but with her, she could be anywhere. But she's a problem for another day. You have a mountain of an issue to deal with right now. Best to leave you to it. You're not going to help me? Matthias laughed and stood to leave. Are you joking? There's no way I'm tangling with the bull that's running loose in your china shop. Talk about a suicide mission. No. You brought Polonius back? You figure out how to return him to the earth. Ajani found himself staring out his window onto the city below. He barely realized it when Matthias walked out of the room, calling out, Best of luck, Doctor, as he left. A deal with the devil. He clearly made a deal with the devil, although this particular deal had two devils in it, both Matthias and his murderous expert. No, there was no time for this. No time to waste thinking of how Matthias's expert had deceived him. No time to think of her at all. All there was how to sort out the problem in front of him. No crying over spilled milk. There wasn't any turning back, not now. He'd sold his proverbial soul for this. He'd sold many souls for this, not just his own. The only way out is through, he said to his reflection in the mirror. He began to put on a fresh shirt and tie and prepared himself for the phone call from the police. It was going to be a long night.